Hey everybody, welcome to episode number 4 of Composing with Jerry. We'll start working on the Brazen Serpent. And I have to admit that this week has been a struggle. Where we left off, we were in this kind of chromatic cacophony, as I called it, where you don't really have a strong tonal center. I did establish some tonality with some dialogue between the woodwinds in sort of a Middle Eastern kind of flair, but we were still left in a very uneasy, I'm trying to express misery and pain and suffering, right? But I needed to go here where the children of Israel are complaining to Moses about the condition they're in. And this I wanted to be very melodic and very thematic and strong and unified here. Whereas right here, we're still very, very emotionally all over the place. Well, the problem with that is there's 100 different ways to get from here to there. And I think I did 7 different versions of this from this little transition from here to there. Usually I don't have a lot of problems with the ideas, the musical ideas from this musical idea to the musical idea, but the transition between always is kind of a stumbling block for me because I can never decide on the best way to get there. Sort of like if I'm in the mall and I want to go home. I live in a city, so there are dozens of streets I can take. There are different ways I can get to go home. It's all just depending on what is the best way for me to get home. If I decide this street, I could run into construction. I could take this other street and I could hit a red light on the way home. Which is the smoothest, most organic way to get from here to there has been the challenge this week. And while I'm still not 100% settled on this idea that I'm going to be showing you right now, it is the best of all of them so far. Let's go ahead and watch that, and we'll discuss it afterward. Let's get my headphones on. Okay, so where we left off before was here. I'm just going to play from 100, and we come up. Well, I'm going to play the last little bit from 98, where we introduce the strings having this Colegno technique where they're playing with the wood of the bow. This will be the cellos and the violas. And then after this little dialogue between the flute and the English horn happen, this kind of is establishing a little bit of a Middle Eastern tone here. We're still chromatic with all of these little chromatic things happening here. There's still some uneasiness and unrest, but we're starting to have some melodic stuff in here that's kind of giving us a sense of a center, a home, so to speak, musically. But it doesn't last, and I'll show you. So let's start with 90, 98, and we'll play that. So yeah, this is what we did last week. Here comes that dialogue. Okay, so that dialogue ends, and then I still have the contrabassoon continue doing that chromatic little pattern it does. But I kind of establish a new thing here with the strings. I'm having the basses and the cellos do a C or an E, and then dun 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 dun, right? And then I split the cellos and I bring in this kind of an echo, but it's a fifth above. And then later on I'll bring in the violas, doing sort of the same thing, but it's on a different tone. And so the pitch is not fitting in with this established kind of, we're not in E minor here. This takes us away from that a little bit. And same thing when second violins come in. They're on their own different thing. It's building a little bit of a chromatic and dissonance here on the same kind of chord that we're doing here. So I'm just going to play that starting from here. This is the strings. And I'll just play until here when we, I'll go to this next section here, but right now I'm just going to play this. So I continue the collegno with the second violins and the violas. So that doesn't really fit into that key. Neither does that. So we have this kind of dissonant chord, and then crescendo to a silence, and then we're going to come in with a new section. So I'm giving kind of a little bit of a hint that we are in this kind of a new tone or this new mode. And nothing really happening as far as the windwoods on this part, but I do have the contrabassoon doing that thing. So I'm going to play just that section with the percussion still continues that little pulse with the timpani bum bum, and the harp is doing the same thing. And I actually bring the harp in a little bit to counteract the fact that we are having less of the collegno coming in with when the violas come in, because they have to stop doing that in order to play their with the hair of the bow, their melody. And then it's here. I have the second or the first violins doing it here, and right now I've got it. It's a little too loud, but when I actually mix all this together, it'll be much better. But right now, if I have it at mezzo forte, it's a little too soft in this playback. So some of these, what might seem extreme dynamics, are here simply for the playback at this moment. When I export all of this and put this into my digital audio workstation, the mix will be much better, and then I will come back and affix all of these dynamic markings to match what they're supposed to. So, all right, so let's take it from 106 with everybody together. So we still have this, the timpani, they're still giving this pulse. The harp is doing that with it. Yeah, that's too loud. But then we crescendo into this has this very dissonant tone, but then we crescendo into silence. So there's a rest, because I'm now going to be establishing a faster tempo. We're going to be doing quarter note equals 85 beats a minute. And we're establishing a new key, at least a new tonal center, but we're not really changing keys yet. So when you're highly chromatic, it doesn't make a lot of sense to actually change keys on the notation when you're going to be following just the accidentals anyway. So, all right, so let's go ahead and play it from just the strings from this point on. So you're going to hear this. These lower strings will crescendo, and then we're starting this new key, and this new, well, it's not really a new key, but it's a new tonal center, and then a new tempo. So we're immediately getting back into dissonance and chromaticism. So that's just the strings there, and it's not really that obviously nice to listen to, but it's jarring us away. We're building up the momentum of misery and suffering that the children of Israel are going through. And so what's happening with the woodwinds and the horns. Well, I'll do the horns first. So I just have just the first and second French horn play, but I just have them. And then I'm basically having these guys play in parallel fifths. They are supporting what's happening here with the bassoons and the contrabassoons, but they're an octave higher. Nothing much to listen to, really. It's just okay. So that's the horns. Let's listen to what the woodwinds are doing now. So the bassoons are basically doubling what's happening with the cellos and the or the lower cellos and the double basses. But then I have this oboe little figure that's kind of echoed with the flute. But then they have these series of runs, and these runs are basically chromatic, and they go step up. We start off on on G here, then G sharp, then A, then or it should be G sharp or A sharp or B flat, and on. We just kind of build up and build up. And the first half of the measure, you'll hear the same notes. These guys are in octaves, and then this repeats, or this says the same thing. This repeats what this does, but on the second half of the measure. Then you have the same thing here. You have these instruments playing this pattern. These instruments will repeat that same pattern, but on the second half of the measure. So it's kind of a little echo. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit play. Boom. See, there are little echoes. Echo. And it speeds up. Okay, so that's now in and of itself, that doesn't sound much. And this whole section actually isn't that much pleasurable to listen to. I mean, if I'm being honest, this is not meant to be. Okay, so I'm going to play from 114 the entire orchestra until we get to the section that I was trying to build towards, and that is where the children of Israel are complaining to Moses about their condition. And I actually do bring in the choir for that, and I'll play that for you in a second. But let's hear this. This is everything coming in together. The orchestra coming at measure 114, and now we're changing to a new tonal center, which immediately gets shuffled because now we're doing all this chromaticism and dissonance. But then now we're at a faster tempo, and it's a little bit louder. So strings by themselves. Okay, so kind of got this build up and build up and build up until it's like, right? To me, it feels like someone's kind of twisting, wrenching, kind of like if you took a wet towel and you were, squeezing all of the water out of it. That kind of tension, that build up, that's what it feels like to me. It's just like, yeah. And but then we have a quiet little section here with the strings, which I don't think there's anything else. Nope. Okay, so just the strings. So I'm just going to play just the strings here until we get to the choir part. But again, I still have that pulse, the pizzicato. Okay. So now we're leading to this one section that I already kind of had in my idea, in my head, what I wanted to do for this. When I decided I was going to use the choir, I decided on on having them do lyrics. They weren't just going to be another instrument in the orchestra as far as just timbrely, you know. Um, and I'm sure when I get this worked out, it'll actually have spacing so you can read all these, right? But let's focus on a little bit on that. So I basically kind of um, restated. I didn't quote the scripture directly. Moses, Moses. They didn't say Moses. They just said, you know, wherefore have you brought us out? You know. So I just said, Moses, Moses, why have you brought us out of Egypt? Then I repeat that, Moses, Moses, why have you brought us out of Egypt to die, to die, to die, to die? And that's as far as I've gotten, but I'm going to play that. Here's just the choir part. Then unison. And then the harmony. Definitely establishing that Middle Eastern feel. Okay, so that's where I knew I wanted to get to. So all that we just did was building up to this section. Now the strings are basically supporting everything that you're hearing with the choir doing harmonically, but just in a much quieter type of a thing. I do have a couple little flourishes there, but I'm just going to play just the strings right here. So they're soft. Okay, so that's what the strings are doing for the choir. And the only thing added there was I have the harp, because there's nothing going on with the woodwinds here. They're empty. But I'm having the harp double what's happening with this little arpeggiated pattern that I do with the violas. So yeah, let's listen to the choir and the strings and everybody here, starting with, well, I'll end up on 126. So that's, see, now we are much more tonal now. Not a lot of chromaticism. So that's it for now. So I already have an idea what I'm going to do with them. This is leading. The reason why this is crescendoing is because it's going to be loud and more powerful now when they're talking about how they have no food, they have no water, and that they're tired of the light bread. But again, this is just going to be, you know, reinforcing their misery, right? These guys, you know, they're struggling. They're used to having plenty of food and plenty of water to drink when they were living in Egypt, and now they're following Moses around in the desert. So, they're belly aching. But I kind of try to put myself in their shoes to see how I would feel if I was going through all this. And yeah, I would probably be doing the same thing. It'd be hard not to. You're accustomed to a certain life, even if it's in slavery. You still have food. You had all of your basics taken care of for you. You were worked to death, but you had all of your basics taken care of for you. So anyway, I'm thinking what I'm going to be doing next is I'm going to be continuing with the choir, talking about the no food, no water, and then that's going to build a little bit more with intensity and power, and then the snakes will make their entrance, and then we'll go with that. So that was the end of episode 4. We're now having the children of Israel complain to Moses, and I think I like the idea of using the choir. I wasn't going to at first. I was just going to try doing it just with the orchestral instruments. But since I already kind of established choral work at the very beginning with the using of that text from Milton, I figured I already got it. Let's just use it. And I think where I want to take it next is going to be nice, and it will lead very, very, very well into when the serpents start biting and attacking them. So thanks for hanging in with me. Thanks for watching these. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, and I appreciate that you are here and watching this. Have a great week, and we'll see you for episode 5.